At 19, I found a lump at the base of my neck. When I told my parents, they didn't believe me. They said I was faking it. For 7 months, I was ignored, my health ignored, until one day, everything changed. What happened next will shock you. If you or someone you love feels unheard, this story is for you. Watch closely. It's strange how one tiny moment can stay burned into your memory forever. For me, it was an ordinary evening, just another end to another day. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing my hair the way I always did. The light above was warm but dim, casting a yellow glow over my face. The hum of the bathroom fan filled the air, and the scent of my shampoo still lingered in my damp hair. It was one of those quiet, almost boring moments. Until it wasn't. As my brush slid through my hair, my other hand absent-mindedly rested against my neck. My fingertips grazed the skin just above my collarbone, near the base of my neck, and that's when I felt it. Something small, something firm, something that definitely wasn't there before. At first, I thought it was just the muscle or maybe a knot from bad posture. But when I pressed again, I felt it more clearly, a hard, round lump sitting just under the skin. My hand froze mid-motion, the hairbrush hanging loosely in my grip. I leaned closer to the mirror, tilting my head slightly so the light could hit that spot. I couldn't see anything unusual, no redness, no bruise, no swelling. But my fingers didn't lie. It was there, quietly sitting under my skin like a secret I hadn't been told. My heart skipped a beat. "What is that?" I whispered, as if saying it too loudly might make it grow bigger. I ran my fingers over it again, and again, hoping it would magically vanish under my touch. But it stayed. Solid, silent, unmoving. A wave of unease washed over me. I didn't feel pain, just a deep, unsettling wrongness. You know that instinct you get when something feels off, even if you can't explain why? That's exactly what I felt in that moment. I stood there for a few minutes, frozen, staring at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked the same. Same brown eyes, same tired face from a long day. But now it felt like I was looking at a stranger. How long had this lump been there? Hours? Days? Weeks? And how had I never noticed it before? My mind began racing through possibilities. Maybe it was just a swollen gland from a cold I didn't even know I had. Maybe I slept wrong and pulled a muscle. Or maybe my stomach tightened. Maybe it was something worse. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but that didn't stop the little voice in my head from whispering the words I didn't want to hear. Words like tumor, cyst, and cancer. I tried to shake them away, but once those thoughts creep in, they're hard to erase. I touched it once more, pressing a little harder this time, as if testing it might reveal its identity. It didn't move. It didn't change. It just sat there, quietly reminding me that something had shifted inside my body, and I didn't know why. I looked around the bathroom like I was expecting an answer to appear in the tiles or the foggy mirror. Nothing. Just me, my reflection, and the quiet thump of my heartbeat growing louder in my ears. For the rest of that evening, I couldn't focus on anything else. The TV was on in the living room, but I didn't hear a single word. My phone buzzed with notifications, but I didn't look. My mind kept circling back to that moment, my hand on my neck, the feel of that tiny, stubborn lump, and the sinking feeling that my life had just taken a turn I didn't understand yet. I didn't know it then, but that small discovery was the start of something far bigger than I could have imagined. It was the first clue in a story that would test my trust, my patience, and my strength in ways I wasn't ready for. That night, As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I reached up and touched it again, just to make sure it was still there. It was. And something told me it wasn't going away anytime soon. The moment I felt that lump, I didn't want to waste time. My mind was buzzing with worry, but I thought, okay, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe Mom and Dad will know what to do. I walked straight out of the bathroom and into the living room where my parents were sitting. Mom was scrolling through her phone while Dad watched TV, the sound of the evening news filling the room. "Mom, Dad, look," I said urgently, pulling my hair aside and pointing at the base of my neck. "There's something here. I think I should get it checked." Mom lifted her eyes from her phone for just a second. She gave the smallest glance, barely more than a flicker, and then looked back at her screen. Dad leaned forward, squinting for a moment, then frowned. "You're overreacting," he said flatly. "It's probably just a swollen gland. Happens all the time." I blinked at them, stunned by how quickly they dismissed it. I'd expected concern, maybe even panic. Instead, I got a diagnosis in less than 3 seconds. No questions, no real look, nothing. "I'm not overreacting," I insisted. "It feels different. It's hard. I've never had anything like this before." Mom shook her head, letting out a small sigh, the kind that says I don't have time for this. "Stop acting sick," she said firmly. "You're young. You're healthy. It's nothing." Her words stung. They weren't just telling me not to worry. They were telling me that my concern wasn't valid at all. I tried again. "But what if it's serious? What if it's—" Dad cut me off with a wave of his hand. "You're fine. You just read too much online. Not every little bump means something bad." He said it in that tone parents sometimes use when they think you're being childish, condescending, but trying to sound calm. I wanted to believe them. I really did. But I knew my body. I'd never felt anything like this before. Something deep inside me, an instinct I couldn't explain, kept screaming, "This is not nothing." For the rest of the evening, I caught myself touching the lump again and again. Every time I pressed it, I remembered my parents' faces, how quickly they had brushed me off. Part of me wanted to argue again, to demand that they take me to a doctor right away, but another part of me felt silenced, like my words would just bounce off them and vanish. They'd already made up their minds. It was nothing. End of discussion. Later that night, as I sat on my bed, I replayed the moment in my head. The quick glance from Mom, the dismissive tone from Dad, the way my concerns had been swept aside in less than a minute. And I couldn't stop wondering, what if they were wrong? What if ignoring this now would cost me later? I wanted answers. I wanted reassurance. But instead, I was left with doubt, fear, and the unsettling realization that if I wanted to be heard, I might have to fight for it. In that moment, I didn't know just how true that would turn out to be. The next morning, the first thing I did when I woke up was touch my neck. The lump was still there, unchanged, unmoving, and just as unsettling as the night before. I told myself that maybe today would be the day my parents actually listened to me. Over breakfast, I brought it up again. "Mom, Dad, the lump is still there. I think we should see a doctor." My mom didn't even look up from buttering her toast. "Stop worrying so much. It's probably just your body fighting off something minor." Dad nodded in agreement. "Exactly. Nothing to spend money or time on." That answer wasn't enough for me. I wanted them to at least look concerned, to take me seriously. But they didn't. By the third day, my frustration was starting to turn into desperation. I mentioned it while we were in the car, hoping maybe a change of setting would make them hear me differently. Instead, my dad chuckled and said, "You know, sometimes I think you just like making problems where there aren't any." That hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just the dismissal. It was the idea that they thought I would fake something like this. I wasn't a child pretending to be sick to skip school. I was 19, and I knew what I was feeling. For the rest of the week, every attempt I made to talk about it ended the same way. They would either change the subject entirely, asking about my classes, the weather, or something on TV, or they'd tell me to stop imagining problems. It was like my words didn't even register in their minds. One evening, as I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. Dad's voice was light, almost amused. "She keeps bringing it up. Maybe she just wants attention." Mom laughed softly. "Yeah, she's always been a bit dramatic." My chest tightened. I wanted to march in there and shout, "Do you really think I'd make this up?" But instead, I stayed frozen on the couch, staring at the screen without reading a single word. The thing about being dismissed over and over is that it doesn't just make you angry, it makes you start questioning yourself. Was I overreacting? Was I letting my mind blow this out of proportion? Or was I right, and they just didn't want to believe me? The lump wasn't going away. In fact, I thought I could feel it slightly more when I tilted my head in certain directions. It was subtle, but I noticed, and that scared me. By the end of that week, I felt caught in a strange, lonely place. On one side was my gut telling me something was wrong. On the other side were my parents, telling me I was imagining things. And in between those two voices was me, confused, hurt, and unsure of what to believe. The worst part wasn't even the lump anymore. It was the feeling of being unheard. That week taught me something I hadn't fully understood before. Sometimes the people you expect to protect you the most are the ones who can make you feel the smallest. I didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just the beginning of my health struggle. It was the start of a fight to be taken seriously, and that fight was going to last far longer than I ever imagined. A whole month slipped by since I first noticed that lump on my neck. At first, the change was subtle, barely noticeable even to me. But day by day, it became impossible to ignore. The lump wasn't just a small bump anymore. It had grown just enough for me to see it when I glanced in the mirror. It sat there, quietly making its presence known, like an unwelcome guest I couldn't get rid of. Along with the lump, my body started sending me other signals, ones I couldn't explain, and that scared me even more. I found myself feeling exhausted all the time, like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, even after a full night's sleep. No matter how early I went to bed, I woke up drained, barely able to get out of bed in the mornings. Simple tasks like getting dressed or making breakfast felt overwhelming. My appetite shifted too. Foods I used to love suddenly tasted bland or made me feel nauseous. Sometimes I'd eat just a little and then feel full, as if my stomach was trying to tell me something was wrong. But no matter how much I tried to push through it, my energy kept slipping away. The nights became the hardest. I started waking up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, my sheets sticking to me as I tried to calm my racing heart. The darkness felt colder than ever, and the lump on my neck felt like a heavy secret I was forced to carry alone. I tried to hide it from my parents, but my changing habits and tired eyes made it harder to keep everything a secret. Still, when I tried to talk to my parents about all these changes, it was like hitting a brick wall. They brushed off the lump like it was nothing, and the tiredness, well, that was just me being lazy, they said. They told me to stop worrying and to focus on school or work instead. One afternoon, I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop, but I caught my mom speaking on the phone with my aunt in the next room. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard her say something that felt like a punch to the gut. "She's making a fuss over nothing. Don't worry." The words echoed in my ears, and suddenly, all the frustration and pain I'd been bottling up exploded inside me. They weren't just ignoring me. They were telling other people that I was overreacting, that my concerns were fake. I realized it wasn't just about me anymore. My parents were spinning a story that I was just being dramatic. I wanted to scream, to tell them how much it hurt to be dismissed not only by them, but by the people they spoke to behind my back. It wasn't just my health at stake anymore. It was my dignity, my voice, my reality. From that day on, the lump wasn't just a physical reminder of something wrong with my body. It became a symbol of how alone I felt. My parents' refusal to acknowledge my pain made the journey feel endless and lonely. Each day, I fought not only the growing lump and exhaustion, but also the silence and disbelief from the people I needed most. But even though they ignored me, deep inside I knew I couldn't give up. The lump was still there, and my body's signals were growing stronger. I realized that if my parents wouldn't listen, I would have to find the strength to fight for myself. I was scared, I was tired, but I was not invisible. By the time the 3rd month had passed since I first noticed the lump, I knew something was seriously wrong. It wasn't just a small bump anymore. My neck looked a little swollen, especially on one side. Sometimes when I tilted my head just right, I could see the outline of it under my skin. A subtle but unmistakable shadow. Every time I caught sight of it in the mirror, my heart sank a little more. It wasn't just the lump itself. It was the constant reminder that my body was trying to tell me something, and that something wasn't good. I was exhausted all the time now, both physically and emotionally. The tiredness wasn't going away, no matter how much I slept. My mind felt foggy, and simple tasks that used to be easy started feeling overwhelming. But the hardest part wasn't just how my body was changing. It was the silence around me, the way my parents refused to listen, refused to believe. One evening, I gathered all my courage and went to them again. I was desperate, scared, and needed help. "Please, Mom, Dad, I think I really need to see a doctor. The lump has grown and I feel terrible all the time." For a moment there was silence. Then my dad snapped. "Enough," he said sharply. "You're fine. You're just making a big deal out of nothing." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I stood there, stunned, as if I'd been slapped by the very people I was supposed to trust the most. My mom didn't say anything. She just looked away, avoiding my eyes. That night, I locked myself in my room and let the tears fall freely. I cried until my eyes were puffy and my throat was sore. I felt crushed, not just by the lump in my neck, but by the weight of their rejection. As I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, doubts started creeping in. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was nothing, and I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was imagining the exhaustion, the sweating, the way my body had changed. But deep down, something inside me refused to believe that. I could feel it in every fiber of my being. That tiny lump was real. The tiredness was real. The fear was real. I started replaying every moment in my head, every time I tried to tell them how I felt. I realized how alone I had become in this struggle. I wasn't just battling a mystery illness. I was fighting to be heard, to be believed. And that fight was breaking me. I wanted to scream at them, to demand that they see the truth. But the words stuck in my throat, caught between my fear and their dismissal. In the silence of that night, I made a promise to myself. I would keep fighting. I would find a way to get help, even if it meant doing it alone. Because sometimes, the people who are supposed to protect you can't. And when that happens, you have to protect yourself. That night was my breaking point, the moment when fear and frustration collided and forced me to find strength I didn't know I had. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if the lump was dangerous or not. All I knew was that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I wasn't overreacting, and I was ready to prove it. It was a quiet evening, one of those nights and the house feels too still, and every little sound seems louder than usual. I was sitting in my room, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the lump on my neck and the heavy weight of everything I'd been feeling. My parents were in the kitchen, voices low, but somehow I caught them. At first, their words were just a faint murmur, but then I tuned in more closely. Dad's voice was tense, cautious. "We can't tell her now. She'll panic." Mom responded softly, but her worry was clear. "But what if it gets worse?" Those few words stopped me cold. I froze, heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. What did they mean by tell her? Were they talking about me? Did they already know something about the lump? Something serious? For weeks, I had been begging them to take me to a doctor. They had brushed me off, laughed at my concerns, and told me I was making a fuss. But now, hearing this conversation, a sick feeling curled deep in my stomach. Were they hiding the truth from me? I didn't move, didn't breathe too loud. I just listened, straining to catch every word. My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. What if the lump wasn't nothing, as they had said? What if it was something much worse, something they were too scared to tell me? The thought was terrifying. But the worst part wasn't the fear itself. It was the fact that the people I trusted most in the world, my own parents, were keeping secrets from me. Why? Were they trying to protect me, or were they just afraid of facing the reality? I remembered the tiredness that weighed me down every day. The nights I woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing, the growing lump that no one would take seriously. And now this secret, hidden behind closed doors. My chest tightened. I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me: anger, confusion, sadness, and a deep ache of betrayal. How could they do this? How could they pretend nothing was wrong when they already knew? That night, sleep was impossible. My mind wouldn't stop spinning with questions. What were they afraid to tell me? What truth were they hiding? And most terrifying of all, what did that mean for me? I thought about confronting them, demanding answers, but I was scared. What if they confirmed my worst fears? What if everything I had been feeling was true? I lay in bed, hands trembling, staring at the ceiling, realizing that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't yet understand. The lump on my neck was no longer just a physical problem. It was a symbol of the secrets, the silence, and the fear that had grown between me and my parents. And now, that silence was louder than ever. 7 months had passed since the first time I felt that small lump at the base of my neck. 7 months filled with worry, exhaustion, and frustration. 7 months of feeling dismissed, ignored, and alone in a battle I didn't fully understand. That day started like any other. I was walking home from college, the sun shining but my mind heavy. I'd been feeling unusually tired for weeks, but I kept pushing myself because I thought maybe if I just kept moving, the exhaustion would pass. Suddenly, without warning, the world around me began to shift. My vision blurred like someone had smeared water across my eyes. The colors faded, the shapes melted, and my knees buckled beneath me. I tried to steady myself, but it was no use. The last thing I remembered before hitting the ground was the cold roughness of the sidewalk rushing up to meet me. When I woke up, I wasn't on the street anymore. I was in a hospital room, bright white walls, the sharp smell of antiseptic in the air. The beep of machines filled the silence, steady and relentless. My parents were there, sitting quietly beside my bed. Their faces were pale, eyes heavy with exhaustion and guilt. I could feel the weight of everything unsaid between us. The doctor came in shortly after, clipboard in hand, his expression serious but calm. He sat down and looked at me, then at my parents, before speaking the words I'd been afraid to hear. "We've run several tests," he said slowly. "Imaging scans, blood work, biopsies. The lump on your neck isn't just a swollen gland." My heart raced. "You have a thyroid tumor." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. "It's been growing for months." I looked at my parents, searching their faces for answers. They didn't look at me. They just nodded silently, as if carrying the burden of something they should have told me long ago. I wanted to ask so many questions. What kind of tumor? Was it cancerous? How long had it been there? Why hadn't they taken me seriously? But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just stared at the ceiling, the sterile hospital light casting shadows across the room. The truth I'd been afraid to face was now undeniable. The lump I'd discovered months ago was more than just a lump. It was a ticking clock, a silent threat growing inside me while my pleas for help had been ignored. The weight of the last 7 months pressed down harder than ever. How different would things be if they had listened when I first told them? If they hadn't hidden the truth, pretended it was nothing, or told others I was faking it? I felt a swirl of emotions, anger, sadness, fear, and a strange numbness all at once. My parents finally looked up, their eyes glossy with tears. My mom's voice trembled as she whispered, "We were scared. We didn't want you to worry." But their fear had cost me time that could have made all the difference. That day marked a new chapter, one of uncertainty, treatment, and a fight for my life. But it also marked the moment I realized how important it was to trust myself, to listen to my body, and to never let anyone else silence my voice again. The road ahead was scary and unknown, but I wasn't going to walk it alone. I looked at my parents, my eyes wide with disbelief and confusion. The sterile hospital room suddenly felt colder, and the weight of the doctor's next words hit me like a sharp knife piercing straight through my chest. "We could have treated it earlier," the doctor said quietly, his voice heavy with regret. "But based on the scans and the tests we've done, it's now a more complicated case." The words echoed in the silence, filling the room with a tension so thick I could almost touch it. My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean? How much more complicated?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The doctor hesitated for a moment before continuing. "The tumor has grown, and while it is still treatable, it requires more aggressive treatment than it would have if caught earlier." I turned back to my parents, searching their faces for answers, for hope, for anything that would make this moment less terrifying. That's when I saw it. My mom's eyes filled with tears, and my dad's jaw clenched tightly as if trying to hold back the pain. She took a shaky breath and confessed, "We noticed the lump when you first told us." I stared at her, speechless. They had known. She continued, her voice trembling. "Months ago, after you complained of that headache, we took you to a clinic. You were asleep when they did some tests." My heart raced faster. They had taken me to a clinic, and I had no idea. "The doctor then told us it was a benign tumor," she said softly. "Something that wasn't dangerous but needed to be monitored closely." "But you never told me." My voice cracked, heavy with hurt. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her tears spilled freely now. "We didn't want you to worry, to stress. We thought if we kept it from you, it would be easier." Easier. That word echoed painfully in my mind. They had hidden the truth, not because they didn't care, but because they thought they were protecting me from fear and anxiety. But in reality, they had taken away my chance to be part of my own fight from the very start. I felt a mix of emotions, anger at their silence, sadness at their fear, and confusion about what to feel next. If they had been honest with me when the lump first appeared, I could have started treatment earlier, possibly avoiding the complicated situation I was now facing. Instead, I had spent months wondering if I was imagining everything, doubting myself because the people I trusted didn't believe me. The truth, once revealed, cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't just about the tumor anymore. It was about trust, communication, and the painful cost of secrets kept out of fear. I wanted to scream, to ask why they thought I couldn't handle the truth, why they chose to protect me by keeping me in the dark. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and realized that this moment, as hard as it was a turning point. A chance to face my reality head-on, with or without their perfect answers. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and there would be many challenges, but now I knew the truth. And with that truth, I could finally begin to fight, not just the tumor, but everything that came with it. Just 1 week after the diagnosis, I was wheeled into the operating room. The day arrived faster than I expected, and despite all the fear and uncertainty swirling inside me, I knew this was the moment I had been preparing for, whether I was ready or not. The surgeons explained the procedure thoroughly, and though I nodded along, my mind was spinning. I thought about the lump, the months of pain and doubt, and the truth my parents had kept from me. I thought about everything I had lost, and everything I still hoped to gain. The surgery itself went as planned. When I woke up, the haze of anesthesia still clouded my mind, but the first thing I felt was relief. Relief that it was over, that the tumor had been removed, that maybe, just maybe, I had a chance to heal. But the relief was quickly met with pain. Sharp, unrelenting pain. My neck ached from the incision. My body felt weak and fragile, and every movement reminded me of how much I had been through. Lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to machines and surrounded by the sterile walls, a storm of emotions crashed through me. I was grateful to be alive, to have made it through surgery, to have a future ahead of me. But I was also angry. Angry at my parents, at the people who were supposed to protect me, who had kept me in the dark for so long. They came to my bedside countless times, their faces etched with guilt and worry. They apologized again and again, their voices heavy with regret. "We thought we were protecting you," my mom said softly, tears in her eyes. "We didn't want you to stress," my dad added, voice cracking. I wanted to understand, to forgive, but the truth was hard to swallow. Their silence, their decision to hide the truth for my own good, had cost me precious time. It had allowed the tumor to grow unchecked, turning what might have been a simpler treatment into a more complicated fight. It made me realize something powerful. Sometimes, silence can be more dangerous than the truth. By hiding from reality, they hadn't spared me pain. They had delayed my healing. They hadn't protected me. They had left me vulnerable. And through all this, I learned how important it was to trust myself, to listen to my body, to speak up, even when others don't want to hear. Recovery was slow. Some days were better than others. The physical pain was intense, but the emotional scars were harder to heal. I struggled with feelings of betrayal and loss, but I also found new strength in my own resilience. I began to rebuild, not just my body, but my confidence, my voice, and my belief in myself. The truth was hard to swallow. Their silence, their decision to hide the truth for my own good, had cost me precious time. It had allowed the tumor to grow unchecked, turning what might have been a simpler treatment into a more complicated fight. It made me realize something powerful. Sometimes silence can be more dangerous than the truth. By hiding from reality, they hadn't spared me pain. They had delayed my healing. They hadn't protected me. They had left me vulnerable. And through all this, I learned how important it was to trust myself, to listen to my body, to speak up, even when others don't want to hear. I realized that my story wasn't just about illness, it was about courage, about fighting for your own truth, about refusing to be silenced. That hospital bed became a place of transformation. I made a promise to myself that day. No matter what came next, I would be my own biggest advocate. I would share my story, not just for me, but for anyone who might be ignored or dismissed. Because in the end, the truth, no matter how hard, is the first step toward healing. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: trust yourself, especially when it comes to your body. Our bodies are incredible, complex machines that send us signals every day. Sometimes those signals are clear and easy to understand, but other times they're subtle, quiet whispers that can easily be missed, or worse, ignored. If you ever feel something is wrong, if you sense pain, discomfort, or just a little voice inside telling you that something doesn't feel right, listen to it. Don't brush it off. Don't convince yourself it's nothing, because you know your body better than anyone else. It's easy to feel like you have to rely on others to validate what you're going through. Family, friends, doctors. But the truth is, no one knows you like you know yourself. No one can feel what ye feel or live inside your skin. That's why it's so important to be your own biggest advocate. When I first felt the lump on my neck, I tried to get my parents to listen, but they dismissed me. They told me I was imagining it, that I was overreacting. They didn't believe me, and it hurt, more than I can really explain. But here's the thing: if I had stayed quiet, if I had accepted their dismissal and ignored my own instincts, things could have ended much worse. The lump could have grown unnoticed, the tumor could have become untreatable. My life could have taken a very different path. Instead, I chose to keep pushing. I kept speaking up, even when it felt like no one was listening. And eventually, that persistence saved me. So, this is my message to you. Speak up. Push for answers. Don't be afraid to question, to demand tests, to ask for second opinions. Your health is the most important thing you have, and it's worth fighting for. Sometimes, the people closest to us may not understand what we're going through. They might dismiss us out of fear, misunderstanding, or even love gone wrong. But that doesn't mean you should silence your own voice. You are your own best advocate, your own strongest ally. Trust that voice inside you that says, something isn't right. And if you ever find yourself feeling unheard or dismissed, don't give up. Find someone who will listen: a doctor, a friend, a counselor. Keep seeking support until you get the help you need. Because you deserve to be heard. You deserve to be believed. I share my story not just to tell you what happened to me, but to remind you that your experience matters. Your pain matters. Your health matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, not even your family, not even your closest friends. Your body is your home, your life, and your future. Protect it. Respect it. And most importantly, listen to it. In the end, healing starts when we stop doubting ourselves and start trusting our own truths. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gives you the courage to stand up for yourself, to speak your truth, and to never settle for less than the care and respect you deserve. Remember, you are stronger than you think, and your health is worth every bit of the fight. If you found this story helpful or inspiring, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories and important messages. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourself and remember, your voice matters.